JPMorgan Chase made 57 billion in net profit in 2025. That is one of the largest profits ever reported by a bank anywhere in the world. But here is what the number actually means. Less than half of that 57 billion came from interest on loans and deposits. The rest, it came from fees, trading, and one specific revenue stream, the one that tells you exactly how much of that profit came directly from advisors like yours. This is episode 1 of How Money Really Moves, a 5-part series where I take apart the financial system piece by piece. Today, I will show you 3 things. First, the 3 revenue streams that power every bank on the planet. Second, why your bank earns up to 15 times more when you buy their fund instead of an ETF. And third, one document your bank is legally required to show you, but almost no one ever asks for it. This is not a takedown of banks, it is a look inside their books. I spent over 20 years in banking. Let me show you how it actually works. Think of a bank like a supermarket. It buys one product cheap, your deposit, and it sells it at a higher price. Loans. That is the aisle. This is one revenue stream. But supermarkets do not survive on aisle margin alone. They make money at the checkout, transaction fees, card fees, and they make money from shelf placement, which products get promoted and which get buried. And they make money from services most customers not even think about. Delivery, loyalty schemes, data. Banks work exactly the same way. 3 revenue streams. Let me show you each one properly, because if you only remember one thing from this video, it is the difference between these 3. The first stream is the one everyone knows, interest. It works like this. You put money into a saving account, the bank pays you a small interest rate, today somewhere between 0 and 2% in most European countries. That money does not sit in a vault. The bank lends it out as mortgage, as business loans, as consumer credit. And those loans pay the bank a much higher interest rate, often 5, 4, 6 or even higher percentage rate. The difference between what the bank pays you and what it charges the borrowers is called the spread, or in banking language, the net interest margin. In the US, that spread is currently around 3.2%. In the euro area, around 1.5%, less than half. That is not because European banks are worse at their jobs, but because American banks carry a far more high-yield credit card debt on their balance sheet. High risk, high yield, wider spread. Now, and this matters, the spread is not a trick. The bank takes on real work to earn it. It takes on the risk from the borrower that might default. It manages the mismatch between short-term deposits and long-term loans. It maintains the infrastructure that moves your money. Interest income pays for all of that. And historically, that was the whole story of banking. The second stream is where things get more interesting. Fees. Wealth management fees, custody fees, transaction fees, advisory fees, card fees, account fees. Every time the bank does something for you, that is not simply lending or borrowing money, there is a fee attached. And again, these fees are not hidden charges. Each one pays for a real service. Custody means the bank is legally responsible for safeguarding your securities. Advisory means endless research products for you. And execution means the bank has the infrastructure to route your order through the global exchange. These things cost money to run. To give you a sense of scale, at Deutsche Bank, fees and commissions made up about 35% of total revenue. That is roughly around 10 billion from fees alone. And the trend across European banking is clear. As interest rates come down, fee income becomes the growth engine. McKinsey's Global Banking Review put it simply, the banks outperforming their peers all share one trait. They earn more than 40% of their revenue from fees. So, fees are not a scandal, they are the price for everything the bank does beyond holding deposits and making loans. But, and this is where we will come back to, not every fee creates the same incentive. The third stream is one of the most people never think about, trading and treasury. Banks buy and sell currencies, bonds, derivatives every single day. Sometimes they do it for their clients. Corporate customer needs to hedge their currency exposure, for example. Sometimes they do it to manage their own balance sheet, making sure they have always the right amount of each currency available to run their business. And here is the part most retailers miss. Banks also act as market makers. That means when you buy or sell a security, somebody has to be on the other side of this trade. Often it's a bank. They hold inventory, they quote prices, they make the market liquid. Without market makers, there would be no instant trading. Prices would move wildly. Small retail order would have to be filled. So yes, banks earn from trading, but in return they create the liquidity that lets you click buy and get it filled in half a second. How big is the third pillar? For pure investment banks like Goldman, trading can account for roughly half of all their revenue. For a universal bank with a large retail and corporate division like Deutsche Bank, it's closer to 1/3. In Europe, there is no ban on proprietary trading, banks trading with their own money. In the US, that was restricted after the 2008 crisis. Different system, same underlying function. So, 3 streams: interest, fee, trading. None of them are hidden. All legit business. They all pay for real services the banks provide. Understanding them is not about distrust. It is about knowing what you're actually paying for and which stream your next product recommendation is feeding. Everything I've shown you so far explains how the bank survives. Now, here's the number that shows you exactly how it earns from you. And this number is not an estimate, it is the actual math. Let's get into an example. You invest 10,000 euros in your bank's own active fund. Front-end load typically 3 to 5%. That is 500 euro on day one. Annual cost around 1.5 to 2%. That is another 150 to 200 per year. In total, your bank earns roughly around 600 to 700 euro in year one from that 10,000 investment alone. Now, same 10,000, but invested in an ETF savings plan through the same bank. No front-end load. Annual cost of the ETF, let's say 0.2%, that's 20 euro. They go to the ETF provider, not the bank. The bank earns the execution fee, maybe 1 euro per trade or 150. 12 trades per year plus custody, maybe 50 to 170 in year one. Total 650 versus 50 euro. That is up to 15 times more for the active fund. Now, the quick question. When was the last time your bank advisor sat you down and said, actually for this situation an ETF would earn more? Probably never. And now you know why. There's a second layer underneath all of this. It's called retrocession. When your bank sells a third-party fund, a fund made by another company and not the bank, the fund pays the bank a recurring commission every year as long as you hold the fund. The typical range is 50 to 70% of the fund's management fee. So, if the fund charges around 1.5% a year, the bank can receive almost 1% of that, year after year. In Europe, this must be disclosed before you buy, and once a year after. That is MiFID II, Article 24. But the European regulator's own review concluded disclosure alone has not changed behavior. Most clients do not read the document. Most advisors do not draw attention to it. Now, I want to be very clear about one thing. This video is not about evil banks. Your bank is a business. It has shareholders, it has revenue targets. Recommending the product that generates more revenue is not corruption, it is commercial logic. And remember what we just covered. The bank does provide real services: custody, execution, advice, technology, research. All of that has real cost. But there is a word for the gap between what is best for you and what is the most profitable for the bank. That word is misalignment. Knowing that misalignment exists is not cynicism, it is financial literacy. In Germany, more than 99% of financial advice is still commission-based. Only 250 registered fee-only advisors exist in the entire country, out of roughly 200,000 in total. In the United Kingdom, commissions were banned in 2013. Product costs fell. Fund fees came down. But a new problem appeared. Advice became too expensive for most people. Today, only 8% of UK adults receive financial advice, and the average advice client has over £150,000 in assets. Everyone else is on their own, and this is a horrible result. So you see, there is no perfect system, but there is an informed customer. After this, 3 lenses that tell you exactly what your bank's recommendation is worth. First lens, check. Open your bank's annual report. It is public. Every listed bank publishes it online. Find 3 numbers: net interest income, fee and commission income, trading income. Those 3 numbers tell you what drives your bank. A bank with 30% fee income operates very differently than one with 70% interest income. The first is selling products. The second is selling loans. Both are legitimate, but they create very different incentives for what gets recommended to you. Stop. Before you open the annual report, let me show you what you're actually looking for, because the number that matters most to you is not the one the bank highlights. Second, let's understand. When your bank recommends a product, any product, ask yourself one question. Which of the 3 pillars does this recommendation feed? If it is their own active fund, it feeds pillar 1, fees, and they earn up to 15 times more than if you choose an ETF. If this is a third-party fund, they earn retrocession, 50 to 70% of the management fee every year. If it is an ETF, almost nothing. That does not make the recommendation wrong, but it does mean the incentive is not neutral. And if you have a saving plan at a German retail bank right now, this is not theoretical. It applies to the product sitting in your account today. Third, let's apply. One thing you can do this week. Next time your bank or advisor recommends a product, ask for the ex-ante cost disclosure. In the European Union, your bank is legally required to provide you this before you buy anything. MiFID II, Article 24. It lists every fee, every commission, every third-party payments in actual euros, not percentages, euros. Then look up comparable ETF. Compare the total cost. The difference between those 2 numbers is the price you pay for the advice. So banks make money 3 ways: interest, fees, trading. But the balance between them is shifting. High interest rates drove record profits in 2023 and 2024. Now in 2025 and 2026, margins are normalizing and the pressure to grow fee income is intensifying. That means more product recommendation, more wealth management pitches, more reasons to understand which pillar any given recommendation is feeding. The next recommendation your bank makes, it's not a scandal, it's a business. But it's also not a neutral advice. The system is not broken, it's just not designed with you in mind. If you want more of this, the whole series is called How Money Really Moves. 1 episode every Tuesday. Now you know how banks make money. But what happens the moment you use that bank to buy a stock? The moment you click on buy. The journey is more complex than you think. I am Philip, stay skeptical, and see you in the next one.